It was her idea.
Oh, well then, yeah.
Right? How do you like that? How do you like them apples?
Yeah, I would. That would be so much fun. I mean, I don't want to live in LA, but it would be nice to be able to go see stuff like that. Why don't you move here? How about that?
Good idea.
Yeah, you guys aren't working yet. The writers are back to work, right? Just not the actors.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Are the actors any closer to making a deal?
You know, it's funny. I mean, I know that they've been negotiating. I think maybe they go back tomorrow because yesterday was a holiday and I didn't get any correspondence from them today. So I think
Oh, you're
at the
live.
end of
You,
the night.
you didn't say you went live.
I did say it went live.
Oh.
You never listen to me. Are we gonna fight again this week?
Probably.
I didn't. I should look at your notes. Are you
Yay!
about to make?
No, I don't have it. You know what I have?
What?
I have Faulkner equals Wanker.
Like the writer Faulkner equals Wanker.
No, that's the guy's name. That was the Wanker's name.
Ah, got it. Oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about this, but I was curious if you guys like listened to the latest. You know, been a subsequent filing for Delphi.
I saw it was
listened to
posted, but I
Bob
have
Motta
not. I have not listened or read it actually.
I listened to Mata.
and his wife do the live stream thing that they then put out on there.
Yeah, yeah, and it didn't sound like they didn't attack the merits of. If I understood it right, like they didn't attack the merits of the story. They essentially attacked the they attacked the law, like essentially saying we weren't required to put any of that in this warrant. Was like they didn't say
right.
they didn't say any of that's not true or this didn't happen.
No, and that I know, and Bob actually pointed out that there was a line in there that said, "While colorful and shocking, it's not completely true." And he was like, "Oh, not completely true."
Oh yeah, I'm like trying to remember now. So it's partially true at least.
In there?
Yeah, because they very carefully chose the words that it wasn't like Janet. It wasn't completely true.
Yeah.
So some of it
people
is
sniff
true.
that out pretty quick.
I've been listening to because I was listening to the Delphi stuff. I've been listening to more of Defense Diaries because they've been breaking down the Stephen Avery case.
I apparently need to listen to more things.
Well, I was listening, so I kind of, you know, when I'm at the gym or on the grass stuff, like I ran out of stuff to listen to, and so like it just kind of auto played. The next episode was about that, and I was like, huh. I think they do a really good job on their podcast, and like the Avery case is one of those people are always like, what do you think? Do you think Stephen Avery's guilty? I'm like, I don't fucking know. All I've seen is documentaries about it. I've never seen a case document on the so I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Just the latest episodes we've got. And Valeria, bonsoir to you too.
Good work.
Is this too much yellow? Am I wearing too much yellow?
No, my face looks like I'm dying. So sorry, but it's only because I'm dying. That's the only reason why.
Oh no. Hi everyone. I guess I didn't get to say.
Speaking of things to listen to, which this wouldn't be up your alley. Probably neither one of yours, but I know it wouldn't be up yours, Janet.
Can we mute him? How do we mute him?
Wait.
Conan's episode that came out yesterday is with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, cool.
Well, and I was like, I really didn't have any interest in, like, I don't give a shit about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other about him. He's just whatever. Yeah, you always get excited when I see somebody's on that I really want to hear from.
Sure.
But again, I didn't have anything to listen to, so I listened to it. Fucking A, the first 10 minutes of that interview is one of the funniest things. Fucking Schwarzenegger is hilarious.
He's funny. Yeah, that's
he's hysterical and quick. Like he started on like a rant and was like improvising. And it was like Conan of all people was having trouble keeping up with him. It was
that's saying a lot.
I was in my truck laughing out loud, which doesn't I'm not my wife does that. I always find it very psychotic when I hear her in a room by herself and I hear like, what are you're alone. Who are you laughing for? Which is a weird thing to think. But I'm not an out loud laugher when I'm by myself. And I was laughing out loud and I pulled into my driveway and just sat there and listened to him just ramble. It was so if you're looking for in these tumultuous times, tumultuous times, if you're looking just for something to make you laugh, listen to the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend episode with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I promise you'll laugh your ass off. And the whole, because have you ever listened to their show?
No.
So the format is at the beginning and they record it after the interview, but at the beginning it's Conan, Sona, and Matt just shooting the shit. It's kind of like what we do, and they're ripping.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and then they go into the interview, and then usually at the end, then they come back and ramble on a little bit further. But I think you said that like
Bob doesn't have too many original thoughts, so that's where this whole idea came from.
Yeah. Well, remember this started like we're gonna do 10 minutes before the show with me, you, and Mike are just gonna talk for a minute, and then now it's like at the Patreon pre-hour that we do. But anyway, like the pre-show was fucking hysterical, and then the whole like it was a joy. I needed a joy because I was as if those of you on Patreon may know that you'll hear on Friday that I was yelling at a poor referee last night at my daughter's volleyball game. Really bad because I was a little stressed out. The origination of Ahoy, besides Bob hates it. So Chris wants to know the origination of Ahoy. When Zach first started on the show, I believe it was your first episode.
It was the very first episode I was on.
He said Ahoy, and I said what?
A what?
Yeah, and at the time, our very serious show, he's like, "Ahoy, everybody!" Like, no, what is that? And then, like for a few weeks, you like played with different intros, if I remember correctly.
I did,
because back then, remember, Zach wasn't introducing the show. He was, Mike was, or I was, and then and I'd be like, "And I'm joined today by Mike, hi, and Zach, ahoy!" And I was like.
You want me to go back to that where I can like introduce you guys and we can like have a weird moment of like do you like those, especially when it's like we change every week so you don't really know if you're like, oh, you're not asking me.
The best was Mike every time we're like, and I'm joined by Zach, ahoy, and Mike, thanks for having me, Bob. You work here, Mike. This is your job.
Thanks for having me, Bob. It's definitely a Mikeism. That did not make sense. Did not make sense.
Liz wants to know if I was the dad everyone hates at sports ball games. I'm generally, Liz, I never am. And last night I was in a foul mood and there were some foul calls. And for some reason, I thought it would help the situation if I yelled, "That's a horrible call!"
I like this comment right here.
Terrible.
You said you were going to make shirts for Obsessed Fest and then you did not.
Because they're like, "Are you having shirts? I need to know by Tuesday." And that was Monday.
Right.
And I was like, no.
I hopefully I'm good because they're still wanting my PowerPoint for my Adnan presentation. And I emailed Natalie and I'm like, here's the thing. I'm bringing my own computer. It'll be a Mac side of the computer. So I don't feel like there's no AV. It's just PowerPoint. So I feel like you don't need it. Like all I need you to do is give me a cord to plug my computer into because I'll probably be doing it on the plane.
Right. Yes, be honest with you. Your honesty is appreciated.
Yeah.
But will you? I've seen you on a plane.
Huh?
But will you? I've seen you on a plane.
Oh, I almost fucked you guys so bad. So already there's a chance that Becky and I get bumped.
Oh, I don't plan on sitting by you guys.
Which I will love.
We bought seats. We bought seats by you guys, but I know that you guys are assholes and you will.
Oh, if they give me a free upgrade, then I'm taking that something. But last night I got an email from American and it said, "Do you want to upgrade to first class for $97 because of my status or whatever?" And I was like, $97 to move up to first class? Yes, sir. Yes, thank you. And I started clicking like, oh, that's a dick move, and leave Zach and Michelle back in steerage. But just so you know, if they give it to me for free, see you later. Toodles.
So 2 years ago, we went on a vacation with a group of us, and Bob and Becky got moved to first class. And Bob proceeded to yell down the plane at our friends in business class.
And whatever. It was on Instagram.
Yeah.
I was storying it when they
was calling them peasants.
Get in the back, peasants. Shut up, Bob. Get in the back. And as she's walking, I'm like, "Tracy, turn around. Take the picture, Tracy." Fuck you, Bob. I'm like, "Take the picture, peasants."
Very classy.
Yeah.
You could tell that he bought his plane ticket.
I'm a grown-up.
That's right.
Just to remind you
all,
I am a grown-up.
I've never flown first class.
Never? Don't. You shouldn't.
Never.
I think Janet can attest to this. Once you do a couple times, it's real hard on you when you go sit back and it's like everything seemed fine in coach. And then one time I sat in this comfortable chair and they fed me a hot meal. Yeah. And then the next time you move back and you're like, what the fuck is these unlivable conditions?
Yes. Yeah.
I've flown a lot too to not fly first class.
Yeah, I was when I was making the show, they started putting me up there, and then I got so many. I had like 1,000,000 miles from filming the show. Oh, is that it's time to start?
It's just a reminder.
Oh yeah, Jana has a hard
Not
out,
subtle.
and Zach has a hard out also.
No.
It was right there. It was
No.
teed up. Aren't you glad I'm in a better mood though? I was so
Yes.
You are
angry
doing
earlier.
better. I'm
yes,
really
yes,
happy.
Yes.
Woo!
Bob beats me. I just want that on the
Woo!
record. Bob beats me.
Any of our patrons that watch, they're gonna be like, "What the fuck happened?" You guys happened. That's what happened.
That's right.
I started talking a little bit with my two besties, and then I started feeling better. All right, let's go. You know what I'm gonna try today? I'm gonna try muting the other one of us.
Oh Jesus
I'm sure
Christ!
that'll
That
be
can't
great.
go-
fail miserably.
That
I'm
can't
sure
go
that's
horribly
gonna go
wrong.
Great.
You know what? I'm not gonna do
Don't.
that.
Yeah.
This is such a.
I'll
fucking
go into
bad
a
idea.
10-minute diatribe and realize I was muted the whole time.
Yes.
All right. Would you like to hit record, Janet?
I'd love to, and I just did.
Oh, for Brandon, a 1, a 2, a 3.
Hi, Brandon.
I'm
Ahoy,
just not gonna
friend.
breathe today. I'm
Okay,
not
you
gonna
now
breathe.
you just ruined Brandon's whole edit, Janet.
I ruined it. Wasn't Zach just
You-
talking to Brandon?
And then he was doing his intro, and then you started talking
fuck.
nonsense.
I thought you were talking to Brandon still. God damn it.
You thought he was saying ahoy to Brandon?
Yes.
Ahoy, Brandon.
Because you said for Brandon. So I thought we clapped, and then you were like, oh, hoy, Brandon. Like, I also need to shout him out. God damn it. All right, I'm shutting up.
Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 13 and the Murder of Jody Jones, Part 5. This week, Bob and Dr. Sanderline sat down to discuss Luke Mitchell's defense and the shortcomings of the prosecution's case. Once again, this episode has produced a lot of great questions, and Bob, Janet, and I are going to do our best to get them answered. But before we jump into those, is there anything we need to talk about?
Yes, there is. A couple things. So last week I told you that this week I'm going to cover Robert's habeas that was filed. And as it turns out, it wasn't filed. So the thing that everybody's talking about is just a response to the federal habeas that was an appeal from a previous appeal. So there was a response in this federal habeas that came out. This is all still old stuff. Nothing new is raised in this appeal. So for those of you that are going, Bob, why didn't they use any of the stuff you found? They can't, even if they wanted to, in this. So I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is, so after our follow-up last week, Dr. Lean was listening to it, emailed me back with some answers to some of the stuff Zach was talking about. We might get into some of those a little bit now, maybe not. And then we got into talking about a few other things with the case and other things that we haven't been brought up yet. And it occurred to me that maybe the best thing to do is bring Dr. Lean on for one last episode to put a button on this whole thing. We had talked about it being a 6-part series anyway. And unlike last week where my math told me that last week was part 6, it was actually part 5. So this Sunday will be part 6, the final episode of the Murder of Jody Jones series. And that'll be Dr. Lean again. I'm going to be interviewing her on Thursday. So when you hear this, yesterday. So that's what's coming this. And then we're wrapped for season 13. As I mentioned last week, after this, I'm going to start publishing on the main feed the Adnan episodes. So that's coming up. That'll be coming up the next Sunday. I'm going to start publishing those. I'm going to make that season 14 because it looks like it's going to be at least 16 episodes for us to get through because I've already had to double up on 2 of them. So I want them all in one package where if somebody has listened to the Prosecutor's Podcast, they've maybe been convinced of Adnan's guilt and they want to hear the other side of it, they can go and listen to season 14 in a row. And I told you guys last week, but I want to remind you again that sometime through the week, next week, you're going to get a couple of downloads. They won't be on our normal publishing days, but I'm going to put out an introduction to the reply brief, which I'm explaining what's going on because, originally this was just supposed to be a bonus for our patrons. And now it's coming out there. So there'll be a short introduction episode that's going to come out. Then I'm going to publish episode 1 again. And because I had already put that episode in the main feed earlier. Remember the first episode where I kind of talked about what they were doing? That was on the main feed before he took it to Patreon. So I'm going to put that out again so that they're all in order in a nice package. So you'll see the introduction come out. You'll see episode 1 come out again. If you already listened to episode 1, obviously don't need to listen to that. You probably don't need to listen to the introduction if you're listening to this, because if you're listening to the follow-ups, you're keeping up with what's going on. And then Sunday, episode 2 of Reply Brief will go live, and that'll start then. So that's all what's coming up now. For our patrons, if you haven't listened to it yet, on Friday, Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., if you're watching live right now, it'll be tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Episode for part 6.5 is going to come out, and this is the one where after the prosecutors did their episode where they talked all about the Asia letters, they said that she didn't write them, and they 100% know that Adnan is the one that wrote the letters, and she was begging to help him create an alibi, so on and so forth. I was talking to Asia, and they of course didn't ask her for any comment or touch base with her. So I offered her the opportunity to come on and defend herself, and that's what she does. So the episode on the Patreon feed this week is about a 50-minute interview with Asia McClain, where she's telling her version of what happened all the way from when she wrote the letters through the PCR hearings through today. And then she lets you know what she thinks about the accusations made by the prosecutors on such a big public platform. So that is this week's episode of Reply Brief. And if those of you that are just waiting for it on the free feed, so, in a few weeks, that'll come out on the free feed as well. 6 weeks from now, it'll be out. So that's the plan moving forward. Other little things we have going on. So we've got a lot of stuff happening coming up here pretty quickly. So we have Obsessed Fest is next week. So Janet, Zach, and I, all three are heading to Dallas on Thursday next week. The plan is, I think, for next week to still have a normal follow-up. We're recorded on Tuesday. And then our awesome editor, Brandon, hopefully will knock that out on Wednesday, and we'll get it published, and we'll have a normal follow-up. And then there'll be, of course, the Adnan episode coming out after that. The following week, I'm home for like 3 days, and that is when I've been talking about all year. I'm gone to Colorado for 10 days, and we'll be without any internet service or phone service at all during then. So what I was going to do was just maybe put out another one of the Adnan episodes, so you guys have an episode on Friday. But then Zach reminded me that we're doing a live follow-up at Obsessed Fest next week. So assuming that goes well and we're able to get that recording, that is the episode you'll get on, will be the 25th, 6th, 27th, I think, of October, that Friday. Mm-hmm. That should be, because a lot of you are asking about that. Can you ever hear that? That should be the live from Obsessed Fest follow-up. And then we'll be back. Everything will be back to normal, and we'll just keep plugging along. So after that point forward, patrons, we're going to continue moving on with the Adnan Syed Reply Brief series. We'll be up to episode 8 or so by then. And then on the main feed, we'll be starting from the beginning, playing the ones that haven't been on the main feed yet. So those will be things will be happening simultaneously. And with that, I don't think, can you think, either of you think of any other kind of housekeeping stuff?
You should call it season 1.2 or 1.5. No, nothing. All right. It was worth a shot.
Great housekeeping. I also want to just shout out Valeria, who reminds us that today, the day that we're recording this, is Christian's 35th birthday. So if you would like to weigh in, send your best wishes, etc., there is a post on Facebook that Valeria has created where people can add their messages or wishes, and she will make sure that he sees them. So thank you so much for handling that, Valeria, and happy birthday, Christian.
Yes. Happy birthday to Christian. And if we don't have any other housekeeping, let's get right into, as I mentioned, Dr. Lean's coming back on. I glanced through some of these questions. Some of them I'm going to be able to answer. Mm-hmm. Some of them I won't be, but we'll talk through them real quick, because anything that I can't answer is all going into the bucket for me to ask Dr. Lean on Thursday.
Great. Sounds good. Well, let's start with Bonnie, who says, is there a timeline anywhere that shows the activities that night? Even though I know people change their stories and times, it's still confusing trying to understand where Luke, the owner of the condom, the moped riders, the bicyclists, the witnesses, the sister's boyfriend's dinner with the dad were. I think to understand it all, I need to see a timeline.
So I've come across a couple online But as the listener alluded to, everybody has a different version of what happened in the time. So I don't know that there's an accurate timeline out there somewhere. I can kind of do my best to walk through. So everything from 4:50 before that, everything's normal, right? So was it like 4:34, I think, or the text between Luke and
That sounds right. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but that sounds
I
right.
think it's between 4:34 and 4:38. They're the text between Luke and Judith's phone where Luke is talking to Jody. Then either at 4:50 or at 5:30, Jody leaves the house. According to Luke and his family, Luke's home cooking dinner. They eat dinner around 5:15, and then sometime around 5:30, he goes down to the wall and he's waiting for Jody. Now, all we know about Jody is she was seen with the stocky man following her. That seems like a pretty legitimate sighting, which was, I think they said, was at like 5 after 5, because there was people that actually know her said that was her walking with this person. I have also heard that the stocky man is identified, and Dr. Lean didn't mention who it was, so I may ask her about that too. So after that sighting of Jody around 5:05, walking towards the Roan Dyke path, no one sees her again. That's the end of any sightings of Jody, other than the Adrena sighting where she saw the couple that were standing there by the path. But that one does not, to me, seem very legitimate, considering like even the clothing is all the wrong color. Everything seems to be wrong about that. On Luke's side, we have people seeing him sitting on the wall at the end of his road, not the wall on the Roan Dyke path, until around 6 o'clock, I believe. Then there's a witness that sees him up near the path, I think at 6 or a little after 6. And then after that, you have his friends that see him at the Abbey until about, from like 7 o'clock on until, I don't know, it was like 9 or 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere around there. And that's when Jody's mom, Judith, calls Luke looking for Jody. According to Luke, he says, I haven't seen Jody. Or, well, we know that he said this, at least. Haven't seen her. She never came over here. Luke says, I'll walk back towards you guys down the path. And if I don't find her, then we'll meet up and figure out what to do. Luke walks down the path. He gets to at right about 11 o'clock, 11:05, 11:10, somewhere around there, is when he meets what they call the search trio, which is Jody's sister Janine, her boyfriend Steven, and the grandmother Alice are all at the entrance to the path on the East House's side. Then the three of them walk back towards, and that's when Mia, Luke's dog, is allegedly, supposedly alerts to the V in the wall, and they go over and find her. And I realized as I went through that, what I left out of that is then you have, we back up at about 5:15, someone sees the moped parked outside the V in the wall, but the moped boys aren't there. One of the moped boys is Jody's cousin, who admits to being there and having the moped there. But I believe he says that it was 45 minutes prior to that. As far as the guy with the condom that was found out there, he also admits to being there that night. I believe he says he was there around 10 o'clock at night, so that would be after Jody's murdered, about an hour before she's found. He was right there within 20 yards of her body. And then you have the bicycle, I think, and we'll get it. I don't want to get, because I think we have questions about this, but I had a little issue with the timing stuff with the bike and the moped and how that worked out with the bike going by. But I think that's basically the timeline, other than, it was 11:38, I think, when they called 999 and the police came. Luke is immediately, he's taken to the station. He's there all night. I think that's and I'm realizing as I went through it, that probably wasn't the clearest timeline I could have given you, but
that's exactly the point. There is not a clean, clear timeline.
Yeah, and that's true, because normally I'm able to say, we know that at this time this happened, at this time this happened, this time this happened, based on phone records or whatever. We don't really have that in this case.
I have a couple of questions that I don't think came up in our listener questions, and they're sort of attached to each other. One is, so just so I'm clear, is the V in the wall kind of the way that you would access that area, or is there a way around the wall, or if you're coming from a different area, are you on the other side of the wall just by virtue of where you live, if you're in that, you know what I mean? Like, Are people
So
getting over the wall in some other way?
I think you can just be on the other side of the wall. Like if you came from the north, you would just be on the other side of the wall.
Okay.
When I look at the aerial images now, and I don't know if this was the case then, in the aerial images now, there's like a golf course and then a strip of forests before the wall. So like if you came, like you'd have to like go through the golf course, through the woods from the other way. If you weren't on a path, I think if you just came from, I don't know how the wall extends, if the wall then extends north, because Roansdyke path runs east and west. The wall's on the north side of the path. I don't know if the path at the ends then extends up to the north where like it would be blocking it off from getting in. From what I'm told, the entire length of the Roansdyke path, it's a very tall wall that you can't get over other than this one place. So if you're trying to get into the woods from the path, it seems like that V break is the only place you could do that.
Okay. And do we know if the condom gentleman was coming from the north? Or would he have had to climb over the wall?
I don't know, but that's a good question to ask Dr. Lean.
So it sounded like there was another trail that kind of went off, and it sounded like he had access. So I wonder if he could come from that other side.
The trail she's talking about, the Lady Path, that is when the Roansdyke path gets all the way to East Houses, it comes to a T of Lady Path, which runs north and south.
Okay.
So they're like perpendicular to each other. So that path is like when you get back to the town, then you come to Lady Path. And then if you go down south, and now that I'm saying that, I was going to look that up. Didn't she say that he lived near the cousins?
She did say within a couple houses. Yes.
Yeah. So that would be south. So to answer your question, Janet, he would have been coming from the south, I believe, because she said the kid, the moped boys lived down Lady Path to the south. So you would go. So
Wow.
if you, I know you can see it on Zoom, the people that are listening can't, but if you went east along the path, got to Lady Path, went down, he lived somewhere down here. So he would have, I would assume, then had to have jumped through the V to get over there.
So that ties into a comment that you made with Dr. Lean in the episode, which is, as we imagine this person in the time that he says that he is doing this is jumping over the wall. I know it's dark-ish. It's dark, right? I mean, but it also was less dark than many people might think it would be at that time of night.
I think sunset was like hours before.
I don't
10
know.
o'clock.
Remember Dr. Lean's talking about things getting gray dark and it sounding like it was later than I remember thinking that's later than I expected to hear it was getting.
Oh yeah,
dark.
what she said was around like 9 o'clock or something.
Someone in the chat will remember, but I thought that
Yeah,
it
she
was
said
kind of
said
late.
it was getting dark at like 10.
That's what I thought too.
That could be.
So anyway, so it's not, so we're just starting to talk about it getting dark around the time this person is jumping the wall when there is ostensibly a body that is pretty findable.
Well,
how we understand it, like shortly
so it
after
sounds
jumping the
like,
wall.
I believe, so if you go over the wall, like over through the V, I believe Jody's body was to the left.
Okay.
And kind of behind a tree a little bit, because like Luke went that way and found her behind a tree. So did Steven. And then the condom was about 20 yards away, I believe, back to the right. So I think that you could go over the wall and go to the condom without coming across the body.
Okay.
But then she said that the way he described where he walked, that he would have walked right almost on top of the body.
So that sort of brings me to my final point, which is this comment that you made as you are walking through all of this with Dr. Lean. You said, wow, something like, gosh, that's a lot of activity right in the area in which someone is ostensibly being killed. There's just a lot going on there for all these different people to not see anything, to not hear anything. There's the question of what the guy on the bike heard, what that could have been. But I imagine you don't have a theory, but one could imagine that after you make that comment, there's a question that's raised of, was she killed in that location?
Yeah, I was wondering the same.
There.
I was wondering the same thing, but I don't. there wasn't anything from what I understand from the autopsy that indicates, and again, the time frame was too short, right? So if she's killed sometime after 5 o'clock and she's found at 11 o'clock, it's not enough time for lividity to have fixed. So there's nothing we can tell medically, like if she was moved. Certainly, it seems she was stripped in that location. It's not noted that there were any drag marks. It's pretty rough terrain. I can't imagine someone moved her dead body down the path. It would have to be through the woods. So it seems like I think she probably was killed there. I have a theory about the condom guy, and I wonder if that whole situation's so strange. But I wonder if he did see the body, and like it's a red herring. Like he didn't kill her, but what if he came across the body, the nude body there, and that's what led to him doing what he did?
What?
I'm not saying that's what happened. Because I'm trying to figure, because we have all this physical evidence on her body that has nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But he's in the woods masturbating steps away from a nude dead body. To me, logically, I think, well, could the nude dead body be the thing that aroused him?
Okay, so let's just.
But then the condom
It's a
thing
kind
just
of-
makes it
I
even
know
weirder.
it's an uncomfortable subject. I'm going to skip ahead really quickly because we're on that subject. Just to quote Brian, and then Sue had a similar question in the follow-up posts, which was just me, but I was thrown off by saying he used a condom to satisfy himself. Who does that? That is not something that you guys really went into. Maybe it's common, but it is a little surprising that you would be in the forest outside, but you would elect, and I'm not a dude, and again, this is a awkward conversation, but I'm just not sure what the incentive is to do it into a condom and then
I can tell
discard
you
the condom in the forest.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you as a guy, it doesn't make sense to me either. If that makes you feel any better,
Yeah.
I can see situations where it may be advantageous to use a condom. Being out in the middle of the forest, supposedly thinking you're alone and there's nothing else going on there, seems like a super weird time. And then none of it makes sense, right? So, regardless of the reasons why, if the reason for the condom is to not, we know the reasons for the condom, but then you leave the condom, leaving evidence of what you done there. I don't know. I don't know. I said the only thing that makes any sense to me at all, and again, this is just what makes sense to me, is if he came across the body and that is what led to, I don't even know the right word to pick. That's what aroused him.
But you're saying that he would already have the condom with him, and then he would.
Well, I don't know, right? So what if
leave
he
and
came
come
across
back?
the body earlier and was like, I don't know, the whole thing,
I
like,
know.
besides it being awkward, let's get over it being awkward. It's confusing. It doesn't make sense. I'm like walking through scenarios, like comes across like, I'm gonna go back to my house and get a condom so I can come back here because I don't want to leave.
But then why do you leave it then?
So here's my one crazy theory. One put my tinfoil hat on, is if he sees the dead body, nude dead body, and for some reason, whatever this guy's got going on has aroused him, and he wants to go do what he's going to do, but he doesn't want to leave evidence of himself there. If he did that right up close and personal where he could see everything, and then walked away where he thought maybe it was, far enough away in the woods, and then discarded it there, that's the best I can do for a theory on why that happened.
Well, Susan, my next question is your next question, so I want to shout you out in the chat. Do we know for sure that he isn't protecting someone and that it wasn't him actually having sex with someone that he is protecting, saying that he was by himself because that person is in a relationship, he's in a relationship? What?
We don't know for sure anything. I want to make that clear.
I just wasn't sure if when they tested the DNA, they would have seen an indication.
Well,
of
that's the thing is
another person.
His story of it being from him masturbating holds up in the fact that, to my knowledge, they didn't find anyone's DNA on the condom except his. And I would expect that if he had sex with somebody, that you would find that person's DNA on it as well. So if it's just his on there, then the story adds up. So then that's just, and the other, I should make clear, the other possibility is that he's telling the truth and he just, as she put it, decided to go for a wank in the woods into a condom and as nothing, is complete red herring.
Erica in the chat says, I have evaluated hundreds of sex offenders. This is not unusual. It's not an unusual act, according to Erica, to use a condom in that way.
That's interesting, Erica. I'll keep an eye on the chat if you want to follow up on that, because I don't know if just the act of using a condom for sex offenders is not unusual, or do you mean that the person who committed the sex offense against the person would then do it? Like, meaning like, we got to be careful here because this is obviously a real person who's known, but she says offenders are aroused by public masturbation. So there's that. And some use condoms as well, she says. So, another theory is that there's some involvement, but then you have all the other, and then I don't know. I think we need to get off this topic because I don't know where to go with it other than me just spitballing ideas, which isn't probably fair.
I want to go back to something we touched real quick, and we don't have to stay there very long. We talked about the idea that maybe she wasn't murdered in that location and put there. But the idea, because it's such a high traffic area that like there's all these people going by, how could she be murdered there? But then I feel like the same way, if she wasn't murdered there, like there's all those people there, you're really going to risk putting a body there?
Sure.
Yeah.
To be seen. So
yeah, the whole crime scene bizarre. And I already thought it was bizarre before we got all these details this week. And then it's even like, usually I feel like I'm pretty good at being able to take in the evidence and come up with a sensible, maybe not the right one, but a sensible theory. And I don't have a sensible theory here. The theories that make sense to me just sound so crazy, even to my own self, that I don't know.
Allison says, was the person who saw the moped the same man who was cycling along the path? If not, who was this person? And did they also say they didn't hear anything or see anyone else? And if that other person exists, why weren't they considered a suspect? And Allison adds, more rhetorical, since no one else was really considered a suspect, it seems.
Yeah, that's another follow-up question that I have too, is who saw the moped? And I don't know how I missed that in the first interview. Like, was it the... I don't think it was the bike guy, because the bike guy, the cyclist testified that he heard a strangling sound. And she said that his original police report said he just heard some leaves rustling when he was over there. I don't think that would be put up as prosecution's evidence at trial if it was, I heard a strangling noise while there was a moped there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it was somebody else. But
and it sounded like the strangling noise was pushed on him, because it didn't say strangling at the beginning.
Right. But I'm saying like if that was pushed on him by the prosecution puts him on. I don't think they would do that, even if he's telling the truth about the strangling noise, if he heard the strangling noise while also seeing the moped there, because that looks very much like it wasn't Luke, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like it's somebody else, but I don't know. I'm going to ask that question.
Okay. Aaliyah says, did the beer guy take the stand and admit that if it was him? Sorry. Did the beer guy take the stand and admit that it was him on the road? If so, this eliminates one of the three prosecution's arguments. Did the person who saw and knows Jody come on the stand too, as this is a strong citing and calls the prosecution's timeline into question? If so, I solely blame the jury. A few more questions. I'm going to stop there so that we can cover some of that.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm realizing I'm reading this that I did a poor job of following up in that interview, because like when she was saying to me that this person that saw Stocky Man and identified him and knew Jody, I guess I took, because I'm always looking less at the the legal side of it and more the practical side of it. So I'm looking at like, okay, how do we know if Luke did this or didn't do this? And I should have asked that question, like, did that person testify? Did that happen in the trial? So I will follow up with that on in the follow up interview.
Yeah, they're just all of the sightings remain very confusing to me as well. Just because
I know that
conflict with each
regarding
other
that,
so much.
I know that regarding that the Stocky Man sighting, that someone, as she said, someone said they know who Stocky Man is, and that person was known to be out of the country. So I'm guessing maybe they didn't end up testifying, because it kind of sounded like it was somebody said, "Oh, that's this guy," and then that guy was out of the country. So they're like, "Ah, that guy's alibied," which is a weird train of logic, because it should be, well, the guy that was walking behind her wasn't out of the country, so that must not have been that guy. But it kind of sounded like it was kind of turned into that the guy was alibied, so it wasn't worth putting up. I don't know.
That was very strange. That was very strange. Yeah, it was non-logic. Aaliyah also is asking if the gentleman with the condom had a criminal record, why he was in the database, and then also interested in whether or not there might be known connections between Jody's sister's boyfriend and the other various people who were who admitted to being near the crime scene, like Condom Guy or the motorbike cousin.
Nothing that Dr. Lean mentioned, and nothing that I've seen when I've read online searching about that as far as the connection between them. But also, this is a very, very small village, so we don't know. I mean, we know that Condom Guy and Moped Boys lived near each other. I don't know if they had a relationship, and I don't know what Janine's boyfriend's relationship with any of them was either. Because I believe, didn't she say that he lived in a different village?
I don't remember what she said. I know that she said she didn't live there.
Yeah.
So Jennifer says it sounds like Sarah G on Facebook had mentioned in a comment thread that Luke had threatened a former girlfriend before dating Jody and held a knife to her throat. And Sarah followed up just to confirm that source was the UK podcast We Walk Among Us, season 2, episodes 13 and 14. So I gave that a listen, and sure enough, that narrator, from where I don't know, says that apparently happened at some time to someone else before Jody. I don't know what the source is. I don't know if that's true. I have no idea.
No, I don't know what the source is either, but I've heard it on about 3 other podcasts as well.
Yeah,
where they mentioned that.
So that's the first I heard of that, is when I saw this question, and it's on my list to ask Dr. Lean, because again, so from what I learned from Dr. Lean this week is police records are never available to the public in Scotland, according to her. So then it makes me wonder about the source. If maybe the source is that girl who came forward and said that that this had happened earlier. I don't know what the source is. That's all I've heard. Did you catch a source anywhere, Zach?
I never caught a source. I like I said, I heard it in multiple podcasts that had been presented, but I've never caught a source. And I don't know if it was possibly kids saying it, or if it was the ex-girlfriend saying it, or who knows.
Yeah, I do. I should have mentioned this earlier. It's going to be discussed in detail in Sunday's episode, because I want to dig into it a little more. But I did want to, because last week's follow-up, Zach was asking about the knife, the why we didn't talk about where this missing knife was. According to what Dr. Lean sent me this week, she said that the knife has never been missing. She said that the knife that belongs in that sheath was turned over to the state by Luke's attorney. It's not missing. So that's all I know about that for now. She says that she has like the notes or whatever about that happening. So we'll go over that on Sunday. But that just popped in my head that was another thing that we had kind of hanging out there, because everything says this knife is missing, and she says that it was not missing.
Yeah, it's hard with some of those anecdotes that end up on podcasts, and I say that with a full irony, knowing that we are a podcast talking about this case. But it's difficult because you just don't know what the primary source is, and that's what we find a lot of times on the internet too, right? Is this repetition of one person said something that ended up not being true, but it just keeps being reported over and over and over and over and over again. And it may be true. I'm not saying it's not, but it's hard when you don't have
Well, it turns into this game of telephone, right? It's just like with it is an example because that's where my head's been at lately. In Adnan's case, like people keep saying over and over again that everybody knew, everybody overheard that Adnan asked Hey for a ride because his car was in the shop, and it's repeated over and over again. Everybody knew this, and then when you actually go through the source documents and read it, it's like no, nobody. That there's one single source for that about Adnan's car being in the shop, and that was Krista, who heard the conversation, and she has said, I didn't hear him say his car was in the shop. I just heard him ask for a ride, and I assumed it was because his car was in the shop. So that's just like one example of how, that story gets told, the next one gets told, the next version of it gets told, and pretty soon everybody's saying something is happened. And that's why I feel very naked, if I'm going to be honest, doing all like this right now, because I'm so uncomfortable working without source documents. And so now I don't know because I don't know what to, I can't commit to anything because I don't, I have Dr. Lean giving me information who has access to the file, but I don't have access to the file. So it just becomes, this is probably the most unsure of myself all of you have ever heard me, but I'm so unsure of myself right now, and super uncomfortable with all this, just so you know.
Well, we appreciate that honesty. Kim, I want to shout you out. You also had a question about whether or not the body could have been moved. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry I didn't give you credit where it was due. Nick wants to know if anyone in Jody's family was law enforcement.
Not that I'm aware of. And I do want to, so Kate just said something in the chat that I want to, so Kate asked Zach if you found any pro guilt podcasts or YouTube videos. So is the podcast you guys are talking about that cited the threats to the ex-girlfriend, is that one that is more pro innocence?
I have not listened to that particular podcast that she cited. I know that I've heard a couple more, but I cannot remember the names on the top of my head.
Do you know, Jana? Were they kind of an...
I listened to, there were 2 episodes. I listened to the first one and I listened to half of the second one, and then I ran out of time. So I don't know if I could say that it's either guilt or innocence. I think my sense of it up to this point is sort of that it seemed like it was trying to just give as much information as it could
to be neutral
without with staying neutral. But it may take a twist towards the end. I don't know.
Okay.
I've stumbled across a few YouTube videos that are pro guilt, but when it's tough because their pro guilt stuff that they're presenting is using the Marilyn Manson, is using the Black Dahlia,
right.
So it is pretty farce. Now there is some information, like you said, with the girlfriend, and there's some things like that could be true, but they also are citing things that we know are farce.
Gotcha. And Amy says that the podcast, I think is when we're talking about They Walk Among Us, she said she thinks it seemed more guilt driven to her, but it leaned that way, but it wasn't hardcore.
Well, and I think there's another one called The Devil's Own that is a pro guilt documentary about it.
Okay.
Olivia says, did Janine and Steven marry? That's Jody's sister and boyfriend, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or was that the boyfriend of the mom?
Steven was Janine's boyfriend, the
Okay.
sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I don't know if they got married.
Okay. And then Olivia also says, I wonder if Dr. Lean ever chatted to anyone who changed their stories or times because they were afraid or coerced or other reasons. In later years, it would be interesting to hear their stories.
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't she mention that somebody? She mentioned somebody who said on the record that the police had kind of driven their stories or pushed them into a narrative. I don't remember which one it was though. I know there was like Luke's brother, that account, but I feel like there was somebody else. Maybe it was the cyclist.
Oh, it was the cyclist, I thought, because he's the one that said he heard rustling, and then that transformed into he heard strangulation.
Yeah,
and he was worried that he would become a suspect.
Right, but that implication from Dr. Lean, as I understood it, was he actually did hear strangling, but he was afraid to say that because he thought that would implicate him, and so that somehow the truth was that he had heard something more. Now,
that's not how I took it.
Yeah, that's not how I took
wrong
it either.
about that. somehow I thought she was saying that when she spoke to him, he said, I was afraid I was being looked at as a suspect. So I only said this at the beginning, but I may have completely misunderstood that.
You might be
and
right.
probably
The way I took it was that he just heard rustling sticks, and the police or prosecution was leaning on him to make that more of an incriminating statement, and he felt like, and this is just was my impression of what she said,
Mhm.
that he felt like they were going to like make him a suspect if he didn't go along with what they were trying to get him to do. But what you just said is interesting. I'll again, another follow-up that I'll have to ask. If
Your
any of
version
you
makes
are
more sense. Your version makes more sense. But that's somehow how I heard it.
if any of you that are listening to this are taking notes for some weird reason on all these things that I need to ask Dr. Lean, email me through the website before Thursday.
Great. Marlena says, did anyone ask Jay's parents, or that's Jody, Jody's parents or sister, if the t-shirt belonged to Jody?
I don't think so. I think that it was because didn't Dr. Lean make a point that they asked Steven first about if Jody would have borrowed Janine's shirt, because she made that point, like, why wouldn't they go to they should have went to Janine and asked Janine that,
Right.
but instead they asked Steven that once they found his DNA on it. So I think the answer to that is no, they did not ask her if that was her shirt, unless that came later.
Gotcha. Marlena asks if any of the potential other alternative, suspects or persons of interest, if we know that they've committed any crimes since the murder.
I don't know.
Jason says, I'm confused about the 6 and 10 markers for DNA. Can't they go back and add markers if it's a complete profile?
I was wondering about that myself, and all I could figure is the way the extraction was done when they extracted the DNA sample and developed the profile, that they would only develop 6 markers from it. So from that profile, you can't add other markers to it, the way I understand it. But if you still had the item, you could retest the item to get a 10 marker profile, I believe. That's my understanding of it, is that when they pulled it out, they only pulled 6 markers out, so that's all the data they have available. You would have to go back to the original piece of evidence to retest it with 10 markers in order to get that.
Okay. Allison just wants to confirm, has a defense DNA expert ever been able to look at the evidence?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it's been a big fight, and then, as we heard, as they were working towards an appeal and trying to get more testing done, then the state started destroying evidence. What the thing that shocked me more than anything, besides some of the stories told about everything that was going on the crime scene that night, was when she said they've destroyed so much and there's only 300 and some pieces of evidence left. I was like, 300 pieces of evidence? That's what's left? So there must have been a ton that they're wanting to test.
Yeah, I was surprised by that number too, and I wondered if you were going to call that out or not, just as an interesting piece, because you would have expected, I really was thinking she was going to say like 20 pieces left.
Like there's only 6 pieces of evidence left. Like, there's only 389 pieces left, or whatever the number was. I was like, wow. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think, like, what are all those? You got all the clothes. Are they talking about all the different swabs they must have taken? There must be a ton of evidence like that.
Sure. Getting in a little bit to the jurors now, Lynn says, do we know if jurors were permitted to take notes? With so many conflicting times being testified to, I would find it incredibly difficult to interpret.
I don't know, but someone else had asked too if the jurors have ever talked about the case, and then someone, thankfully, I think it was Janine, somebody had responded to that.
Yes, correct. Bethany says, have any jurors been interviewed since the trial? And Jeannie says, in the Scottish system, jurors in Scotland are not allowed to comment on anything that went on in the discussion room during deliberations at any time, even after the trial. They can only speak about what actually occurred in open court, and their names are not released to the public.
Yeah. So thankfully, that's not an I don't know, because Jeannie knows the answer.
Thank you, Jeannie. Rebecca says, this is more of a question to last week's follow-up. You said that fundraising by or for the defendant in Scotland is against the law. What about raising the money here in the States and then gifting it to Dr. Lean, say for her birthday or Christmas? It blows my mind that you can't raise money to help a defendant.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that she said that within Scotland, there have been many attempts to kind of circumvent. So I think at one point there was a fundraising effort to raise money for Luke's mom, and then she made the comment that she was going to put all that money. The intent of the fundraiser was supposedly for her to get better living situation, and she had made a comment like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm going to take this money and help with my son's defense. And then the fundraising site took it down and returned everybody's money. So they're pretty strict about it over there. I think there's probably ways to do that. And again, Dr. Lean suggested the best way to help that's available and easy right now is go buy her book, because she's spending the proceeds from that to help in the defense.
Great. And then just to end on Bethany, who asks, maybe we'll get into this later, but what kind of prisoner is Luke? What has he been like in the time that he's been incarcerated?
I do not know the answer to that. And with that, Janet has a hard out. That's the end of our questions. And this has been the I Don't Know Show. We want to thank you all for joining us. Again, I want to apologize. I hate not knowing the answer to all your questions. But I don't want to give you an answer I am unsure of. And so hopefully you guys are able to bear with the fact that that's why I keep bringing Dr. Lean on, because she can answer some of those. So I'm going to try to go back through this before I interview her on Thursday and pick up all the different things that we brought up here that need to be asked. And for those of you that are in the YouTube chat, I'm going to leave this up on YouTube for a couple hours, just in case somebody who has time wants to go through and make a list of questions for Dr. Lean and email them to me. I want to make sure that that's possible for you if you'd like to do that. And with that, go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you all so much for joining us, subscribing. We got a lot of stuff coming on. We're going to be getting deep into the Adnan Syed case. And I do want to tell you too, a lot of like we did this in season 1, but I keep saying like that's where my head's at right now, because this process of going through the case episode by episode, based on what the prosecutors were covering, has been extremely meaningful to me and has been very enlightening, looking at things from a different direction, because rather than just going through and looking at what evidence is out there that shows that he's innocent, now I'm looking at, okay, here's the guilty argument. What do the facts say about that? So what I'm saying is, when you hear the series, when it comes out on the main feed, if you're not on the Patreon, you're going to hear, and the patrons I think will vouch for this, it's a very different take than I think anyone's ever heard before, because we're breaking things down in a much different way than they've been done before. So I'm really looking forward to that. And for the third time, that's that. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
All right, stop on a record.
JV, if you got to go. I want to talk to the listeners for a second off the record.
What are you talking about? She's got 2 minutes, man.
That's right. Let's make them count.
Okay, so I didn't mention this on the podcast because I was trying not to, but there's a YouTube channel called Profiling with Pat Brown. She is one of the Kate, I don't know if you're still around. You asked about this. Profiling with Pat Brown. She's got like a 2-hour YouTube thing where she kind of breaks it down. But again, some of her big points to guilt or these things that we know are kind of ridiculous. Yeah. There's a podcast called Red Handed that I listen to that kind of wobbles back and forth.
Oh, I had them on True Crime Binge.
There's a podcast called Seeing Red that did a two parts of the show. One part was kind of everything, and the second part was kind of leaning towards guilt. Seemed like they lean towards guilt. British Murders, I think, lean toward guilt as well. And then Gen Y did an episode that was kind of all over the place as well. But that was in 2021, so it was a couple years ago.
Okay. Well, great.
I just didn't want to say all those names on the podcast.
I've never felt like I sounded more stupid.
You are stupid.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
You said at the beginning that was challenging.
You are stupid.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
I love you.
Has Rabia or Colin said it?
Colin
has said,
just snub me. Did you hear that?
I love you too, Zach.
Thank you.
Kate wants to know if Robbie or Colin has said anything. Yeah. So, well, I mean, Colin was pretty active on Twitter, correcting things that the prosecutors got wrong to the prosecutors, and he was not. Those corrections were not taken kindly by them. And Robbie hasn't said much. I've spoken with Robbie some. She hasn't said much. She did the on my. If you want to get a little preview of the Asia episode, go look on any of my socials, and I put out like a little 2-minute video clip of what's coming in the Asia episode, and I saw that Robbie did put that onto her story. So she's watching, she's listening. And thanks, Richard. Richard said, "You're not stupid, Bob. You just don't know, and it's not your fault." Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
This one up for a few hours if you want a full replay. Yes. Oh, she's telling Nick that. Okay, you got to go, Janet. I need to.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean,
go.
I feel like I need to upload this before I walk out the door anyway, so I was just sort of doing that while.
Okay, we will let you go, Jack. Zach and I will stick around for a couple minutes in case anybody has any super chats, and then we'll talk to you. We're gonna talk next Tuesday, and then we're gonna see you on Thursday.
I know. I can't believe it.
Let's go square dancing.
Now. I can't wait.
Bye, Janet.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I can't leave.
There she goes. All right. Anybody in the chat here got anything important to say? I'm pretty tired. Zach's full of energy, and he's just full of happiness and joy. And I'm
doing pretty good, actually.
Grumpy. I'm so grumpy.
Just leave. I'll just talk to him. That's fine.
I feel like I'm juggling right now, and I have like 6 things in the air.
Can you juggle? Let's go the other way. Can you juggle?
I can juggle. Nice. I can juggle 3 things. I've never tried to juggle.
Yeah, I can't juggle more than 3, but I can juggle 3 as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting bye-byes. I think that means we're done. All right. We're going to end this stream. Thanks everybody for joining us. And like I said, happy to leave this up for a little while in case anybody wants to wink, wink.
We got somebody on here that says they're going to.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, real quick. Danielle with a super chat. Thank you, Danielle. Excited to see what happens
at OnlyFans.
At OnlyFans. Yeah. Have you subscribed to Zach's OnlyFans yet, Danielle?
Truth and Justice.
It's pretty good. It's all feet stuff.
All feet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's rough.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen at Obsessed Fest is we're gonna go there and we're gonna have a real good time. We're gonna hang out with each other, and we're gonna hang out. I'm hoping there's like a lobby. So at the last place in Columbus, it was like a convention center and hotel all in one, and there was a huge open bar in the middle. And it was like great because like when we wanted to get a chance to go hang out with listeners and stuff, we could just go down, hang out in the bar, shoot the shit with grab a seat, shoot the shit with everybody for a little while. I'm hoping there's a setup like that because I know there were a lot of people that said that they can't get to the they didn't get tickets, but they're in Dallas and they're hoping to meet up with us. So just watch our socials. We'll let you know if
watch my social because Bob won't. I usually end up posting it. To be 100% honest,
I usually post meetups.
When we were the last 2 times that we were somewhere, I was the one that posted them. And then you're like, oh yeah, we're going to be there.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I posted it. I think the record will show. But Kate says, thanks to Zach. And thanks for the asking about your reply briefs. I don't know what were you the one, Kate, that asked if Robbie or Colin have said anything? If so, they have not specifically talked about the reply briefs at all. I don't remember. They're all behind Patreon right now, so I don't know if they've seen them all.
Just show you this comment.
Oh no, I was asking Rabia's response to your reply briefs. No, I mean I have spoken personally to Rabia about.
Just gonna leave that up there for
about them, and the one she's heard, she was happy with. Amy, Zach does post. He definitely does post more, but I'm pretty sure when we had a meetup that I did put a post up saying where the meetup.
I think you just shared my post.
That's the same thing. It's the same thing. All right, people.
That's the post that we had Kathy McElhaney. You couldn't see her because she's this tall,
right? Yep. And Kathy's going to be there.
I won't see her because I can't look that.
You're always looking at eye level, and she's hitting you at belly button level. Yep, that's Kathy. All right, we're going to end this stream. Thank you guys. We love you.
I got to wave slower so it picks
talk
up.
to you next week.
Fuck.